So, I've been asked about pain in the front of the hip that I'm gonna go on the assumption that there might be something wrong with the hip flexor. Now, it could be other things. There's no way to know, and the likelihood is that right now you're probably not going to be able to see someone about that too quickly. So I'll give you a few ideas of what you could check in on. The first of which is take a Pilates class. I have one on my YouTube account. Um, Often hip flexor issues can stem from weak abdominal, weak core. It could be, again, it could always be a lot of things, but if you do some Pilates, I bet you anything that'll feel helpful. So what I want you to try is to come into a lunging position. Do both sides, but specifically on the side that's affected is where I want you to pay attention. Come into a relatively short lunge with your hands on your front thigh, and then I want you to round your spine, so you'll pull your belly back, and you'll slightly turn your tailbone underneath, and then you should immediately feel the hip flexor gets quite lengthy here. So your hip flexor connects from your hip bone to the base of your rib cage, like near the base of your rib cage at your spine. So when you round your spine, you actually pull the upper insertion of the psoas up and back, which will give you a deeper sensation of stretch here in the front of the hip. So do both sides. You can do this too, like bend the knee deeper and then round the spine. So go between a cow spine and a cat spine and see what you can feel out in the front of your hip. It should be pretty intense, especially on the side that seems to be affected. So that's a way that you can get at the tissues and lengthen. There's also, if you're finding, especially like Chen, you know from my classes often, we'll talk about pulling front foot toward back foot. So if you come into this position here and think of dragging front foot toward back knee, you're gonna feel that stretchy stuff, but it's also contracting. So a lot of what you'll need to do, hopefully to rehabilitate, is to start creating action, like contraction, in these lengthened situations. So this is one way to do that. The other, I need a band. Hold please. You'll want to get a loop stretchy band. And to be honest with you, this Perform Better brand is the best, but this blue one might be too strong for you to begin. So you'll put the loop band around your outer feet and you'll lie it on your back. Think of the cue of tailbone turning down so the low back arches a whole lot, which you're going to try not to let happen in this next situation, and then turning the tailbone up and tucking the pelvis, tucking the tailbone, and this is rounding your back completely. You'll be closer to this in this next situation, but hopefully right in the middle, so neutral, low back, spacious. And then you're going to pull one of your feet in so that your right knee pulling toward the hip crease, and then the right leg goes long, and then the left knee will pull in, and then it'll go long. And as I mentioned, this blue band is really too strong. I need one less, one less tension, the next lowest step in the tension. So, I can almost pull my knee over my hip. Really what you want to find here is your knee pulling more over your belly. I wonder if I can do this better with this. So, let's say, this actually might be a better option for this exercise too, because the looped mini bands are pretty small for this. It might be beneficial to have a longer one. So let's say like this, and then I'm going to pull my right knee in, and then I'm going to slide it long. So I'm going to have to set this up so that the thing doesn't roll down my leg too much, but I pull my right knee in, and then I slowly let it go long. And then eventually, after I've done a few like this, I'm going to pull it in. Using my hands, I'm going to pull it even tighter, and then I'm going to try to let it go and keep it there. So I hold that contraction, and then I'm going to super slow to let it go. I'll use my hands, pull it in. I'll try to hold it with my hip flexor, and then I'll really slowly lengthen the hip flexor as the leg moves away. So you want to do, I'll show you this like that. A bunch of contraction. So this is hip flexor shortening.
And then you want to try to use outside force to bring yourself into a deeper hip flexion, which you probably can't do without the use of your hand. Try to hold there, so isometric hold, pulling the muscle in, and then an eccentric lengthening. So anytime a muscle is on length, if you go slow enough, it will contract. So you're working in this lengthened range. And you might try to even do a few pulses. So every muscle in your body shortens. You can hold that contraction, isometric. You can slowly release, eccentric. If you're doing this part fast and letting gravity do it, it's not doing anything. It's not doing nothing. It's just not doing enough. To access eccentric contraction, you have to really actively release from the shortening. So lengthened muscle contraction. I'm just using biceps because biceps tend to be relatively understood from most humans. Whereas iliopsoas is probably not something that a lot of you are quite so familiar with. That's your hip flexor. And yeah, do a Pilates class. Because honestly, that'll be what'll help you. Thank you.